Hello, and welcome to Page Turners, a spookish podcast.
Ooh.
Join us this spooky season as we interrupt our regular broadcasting to bring you weekly episodes of a partially pants-shitting substance, spooky books, and even spookier films. It'll work roughly the same as our normal episodes, just with creepier content. Fair warning though, there'll still be spoilers. That's Amy.
And that's Liv. Ooh. Liv, how are you?
Amy, I am swell. I am stressed.
Don't lie to the people. Be truthful. You're not swell at all. Why
No,
not? What's going on in your life? Tell us about it.
well, we are squeezing in this recording super quick, so
Mhm.
that Alex and I can get on the road and do an 8 hour drive down to Southampton. It's 4:45 in the afternoon, and I'm not packed, so looks like a late arrival for us.
hmm So,
Yeah.
what is the worst part of the drive to Southampton? We drove as far as Weymouth. That's the furthest we've ever driven within the UK.
Forgive my ignorance, where's Weymouth?
Not far from Southampton, right
Oh,
on the south
lovely.
coast.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Well, the worst bit of the drive, is probably maybe like the last hour, maybe
Okay.
last hour and a half, where because it takes about 7.5 hours, but then we always stop. We stop at I don't know what it's called every time, and it's the same one each time. But we stop about roughly, I think it ends up being about just over 3 hours before we get to Southampton. So it's just a bit over. And that's always about half an hour. No matter if I don't get food or coffee or whatever, I literally go in for a pee, and then Alice goes in for a pee, and then we get the dog sorted, and then we're like, always it's half an hour. I don't know how,
hmm
but yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, no, it's definitely the last hour and a half of that drive.
Yeah.
But
And it's a quite a boring drive, isn't it? Quite a lot of
mm,
motorway.
yeah, but I mean,
Mhm.
it's dark. It's gonna be dark anyway, so we're not gonna be
Yeah.
seeing anything. It'll be fine. Alex and I always have a big chat and always have a little. We run through every scenario that could possibly go wrong, and then we
Nice.
discuss how we would deal with it.
Love it.
um, and then we do that on my way to my mum and dad's, on the way to his mum and dad's. Like, yeah, you never know. You got to anticipate family drama, I find.
And prepared yourself for it.
Yeah. Speaking of any potential family drama, how was the weekend in York?
It was lovely. There was no family drama. We had a wonderful time. We left on Friday quite sharp. We hit really bad traffic, probably
No.
about just outside Carlisle, so not actually that far away from where we picked up Rudy's parents.
Mm.
And there had been an accident on the motorway, so we got caught up in that for a bit. But it was smooth sailing aside from that, to be honest, fairly easy drive. And our Airbnb was gorgeous, really good location. Um, so yeah, we had a wonderful time in York. Beautiful place.
Hey.
Loved it.
Good. And then tell the people, did you go to Betty's?
We went to Betty's. Yes, we did. We went to
Oh.
Betty's on the last day. So on the Sunday, we woke up and we'd had a gorgeous breakfast the day before, but that was courtesy of Ewan and Josh, because
Mm.
they had cooked. I say they, Ewan had cooked us some lovely breakfast, whilst we were out ghost hunting. So he stayed at home and cooked for everybody, which was really nice. And then the next day we went to Betty's instead of cooking, and it was delightful.
What did you have? What did you have?
Um, I had it was like a kind of Swiss breakfast, like a potato rosti with bacon,
Oh.
egg, mushroom, it was really yummy, and a side of the cinnamon toast to share with Rory, and everybody shared, like every couple shared a side of cinnamon toast because I had told everybody how good it was. I was like, we must all experience this.
Can you imagine if it was shite? If like that
No.
one batch was and they're all looking at you like eating it, like what the fuck is this? Oh.
Exactly. And it didn't look that exciting when it came out. It looked just a bit like brown bread that was really well buttered. So I was a bit like, I've told everybody to get this. But no, the consensus was it was very nice.
Just that first bite, like the way it's
Mm.
cut as well into strips, it just goes
Hmm.
perfectly into your mouth the first bite, and you just feel it just. Oh
Hmm.
God, I'm hungry. I'm so
Hmm.
hungry.
Yeah, I am too, actually. And it's making me want another serving of that. But yeah, great time. Great time had by all in York, as ever. It's always beautiful.
And the ghosts, you bought some little ghosts.
We bought some little ghosts. We tried to go to the merchants on the Shambles, but that was so busy. I think we got there at 9:45. It was opening at 10 o'clock, and we thought we'll be fine getting there 15 minutes
Mm,
early. Look at us go. And their queue was already at a 2 hour mark by that point.
God,
Yeah.
that is insane.
Yeah, but the staff were gorgeous, really lovely. And one came over and said, listen, there is another option. It's not as fancy. It doesn't have the train. There's some elements of it missing, but it's the dispensary in the gardens.
Hmm.
He said, so you won't have to wait anything close to 2 hours there. So we made our way down there, and it was a 20-minute wait. And we both got to, well, Rudy came with us, but it was me and Josh that were picking our ghosts. Um, and we both got a big one and a little one each, so it was a success.
But when you go for ghosts, that's all you want, really, isn't it?
That's all you want. So I had a lovely time. I took a photo of them in a little photo booth, which I just thought was so precious. Um, Loved every minute of it. Yeah, got home for a gorgeous breakfast after that. So it's a perfect start to the day. Ghosts and then really nice food.
Hmm.
Hmm.
What a day! What a day! I would like to show you my Halloween candle,
Please
and
do.
if I get my arse in the game, maybe I can show TikTok too. But
Let's have
I
a look.
thought
Let's have a look now. Oh, is that a mummy?
yeah, isn't he cute as fuck?
He's so cute. I love his eyes. They look like little half moons.
Yeah, a little like almost shifty. I'm so
Yeah.
desperate. I've already been burning him so much. I'm so desperate to make him a mug.
Yeah, he would make a great mug.
Just
What
like,
does he smell like?
that's the thing. It's like
Mm,
it's fine and it smells quite nice and it's quite like it's not like very artificial, but it's like a vanilla-y and a flowery kind of scent, but not like
quite
a.
nice.
But this is the thing. You're gonna have to come over and you're gonna have to smell it and
I'll
tell
give him a
people.
sniff. I know the typical Halloween smell is normally like cinnamon, vanilla. It's
Hmm.
not that sort of smell.
No, no, or
No.
else I'd be
Okay.
like, it's this.
Hmm.
I also think it's I don't know if you know this, Amy, but we have had overall in total 498 plays on the podcast.
Oh, that's a bit disappointing that we couldn't have just had 500 for this very moment. Never
I
mind.
know.
How exciting.
I'm going to keep refreshing it through the episode to see if we manage to hit 500 by the end. I doubt it,
I
but
doubt it. But maybe. Um,
mm,
well, we'll talk about this later because I don't think it's very good podcast content to talk about the logistics of which episodes are performing the best, but I would like to know so we can discuss that another time.
absolutely.
Cool.
I'll send you a screenshot.
Please do.
Um, what are you currently reading?
All right, I'm reading a book that I think you would actually really enjoy because I know you quite like the vibes of the luminaries,
Oh
and
yeah.
it gives the same sort of feel. So it's called Anathema by Kerry Lake.
All right. Yeah, yeah. I think I've
Um,
seen that. I've seen the cover of that.
yeah, it's a lovely cover actually. It's very like gothic. And it's the Eating Woods is the name of the series, and it's a duology. So it's only the first one that's out at the moment, but really enjoying it. But it's a beast. It's a big old book.
Why?
I want to say it's maybe like 600 pages or something like that. So for a duology, it's clear that maybe she decided she could have made it a trilogy, but has chosen not to, which is
I
fair
respect
enough.
that. I
Um,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
I respect
good
that. Like,
vibes.
because then you'd have to take out half the first book and the last half of the first book and the first half of the second book, and you'd end up with a
Hmm.
bad filler, which is mostly what I find that trilogies are. The second
Hmm.
book is always a bit bleh. But yeah,
Yeah,
you're enjoying it. When you say gothic, obviously we read a bit of Belladonna. How would it relate to that versus and One
similar.
Dark Window? Similar vibes?
I'd say it's very similar to the One Dark Window and Belladonna, but also similar to the Luminaries because the woods is the villain, if you like. There's evil in the woods.
Ooh.
Yes, but it's a very, very, very slow burn romance, and it's very much romance as a subplot. It's not a fantasy romance, definitely not.
Uh,
But
It's your fave.
yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's easy to read. I really like the writing style. Um, it doesn't feel like a long book, but just if you are looking to read it, anyone listening, it is a longer book.
Yeah, strap
Yeah,
in.
yeah, absolutely. What about you? What are you reading currently?
Oh hell. I am
Oh
on
no,
book 8 of the Broken Kingdoms.
it's still going.
We are
Oh,
so close. There are 9 books before I can go and read the Ever King series that you've read.
okay.
So I'm on book 8, which is Reign of Stars and Fire. But actually, this one, so it's been trilogy. This one is a duology, and then there's a singular solo one. This duology has been my favorite,
Oh, okay.
and I think it's because the character, like the male lead, romantic male lead, is introduced in the very first book
Okay.
or the second, but either when it all splits in. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he's part of the first trilogy, and I love
Okay.
him in the first trilogy, and he's been in the second trilogy as well. So it's about time that he got his own. I wouldn't be surprised if either he was written to be quite cheeky and fun and like a fan favorite with a view of him then getting his own series.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, I have really thoroughly enjoyed. Yeah, I think the middle trilogy was tough because I think it was just like, oh Jesus Christ. But actually, the last duology is good, which is good.
Been
But
good.
I can see the end. I can see the end.
Mm-hmm. You're a completionist. You have to do it.
Yeah, and then I'll read the Ever King, and it'll be completely pointless, and none of the characters will pop up.
I think they might pop up in the first one. I think. Because I remember reading
Oh,
the first one and thinking, hang on a minute, I'm supposed to know who these people are, and I don't. But it wasn't a huge issue because I think they are maybe the Ever King involves the children of the characters in the series. Is it the series is this? The series that you have read. So yes, I
yeah,
think it's not essential, but it's going to give you a lot more background.
yeah, yeah. So I'm hoping that's what's going to push me through and enjoy the Ever King. But yeah. So that's what I've read.
Nice.
And of course, we're both reading all of the podcast books.
Of course.
Of
Of course,
course.
of course, which we can't tell you about right now.
Oh, of course not. We wouldn't spoil that for you guys, not until the very end, at least.
No.
Hmm. I've, I've also had my hair cut today. Not that you can see it, but it's
I
behind the
can't see it.
headphones.
I know you did because you sent me a photograph and I just saw it when I was coming home from work there, but I saw that. You can't tell your headphones on, but I'm sure it's lovely.
Oh, thank you so much. God, just so many compliments. I'll be blushing. I'll be blushing. Um, should we get on?
Let's do it.
Amy, what did we watch this week? We are on the penultimate watchings. What did we watch?
This week we watched the 2004 version of The Grudge, which is an American remake of the original Grudge, but it's directed by a Japanese director.
Yeah, it's Takashi Shimizu.
Yes.
Yeah, he did the
Yeah.
original Japanese as well, I think. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
So,
I
okay.
didn't realize there were so many grudges. Like, how many grudges can one person have?
So
Um,
many people, so many grudges. Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's based on the larger Japanese franchise. Is it Yuon?
Yeah.
Is that how you use
Yes.
it? It's
A
a silent
Yuon is
J.
a grudge. A Yuon is a vengeful spirit that holds a grudge.
So then, what's an on you?
I don't know. To
Because
be
I think
honest,
that's. Oh,
the
go
whole
on. Sorry.
thing was a bit difficult to follow. Yeah. So I'll be interested to talk to you about that.
Okay. So obviously, I was very nervous to watch this. This was a ooh, this was so iconic in like the
Right.
early
I
thousands.
wanted to talk to you about this. Talk to me.
Well,
I'm going to ask you the first question. Now, I know that this had a bit of a reputation when I was at primary school,
Oh, primary
2004.
school. Oh
No,
yeah,
not
of
primary
course.
school. No, was
Well,
it primary school?
well, you would have been, yeah, but let's not get into the difference between Scottish and English
No,
schoolings.
it was late. If it wasn't primary school, it was late, early high school.
Early high, yeah.
Um, and this had quite a lot of hype around it.
Hmm.
Um, and it was one of those like, oh, who's watched The Grudge? Who's seen that scene with the and the sound that the Grudge, the ghost makes, the spirit makes? Yes, that iconic kind of creepy
I can't.
sound. Um, so that was my experience of it.
Mhm.
What was your experience of it? Similar?
Yeah, I think obviously never been a lover of like horror or like
Hmm.
especially I sort of think I shelved it as like horror that was only made to scare. Like
Hmm.
looking back on like the things I watched and like it's more like action horror that I was more drawn like so like creature features but like horror that had a and like a really cohesive plot that was about the characters and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Whereas I think I just shelved the grudge in with things like The Ring, like quite early thousands type horror films that were just intended to shock and scare.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Having watched it, I mean, it wasn't great. But I definitely think I'm I misjudged it. But I think we have a lot to talk about in terms of what we would have classed as scary back then versus what
Hmm.
we class as scary back now and sort of but also I think I remember I say I remember it was yesterday or Sunday. I watched it and there were bits of it that I recognized as almost iconic.
Okay, yes. I think a couple of different films have paid some kind of tribute or homage to the
Mm,
scenes in The Grudge for sure. Especially like
yeah.
the Scary Movie
Yeah.
franchise has definitely
Mhm.
done a Grudge. I think maybe not a full film based on The Grudge, but there's been a large chunks of one of the films based on The Grudge.
I think it's three.
Okay.
Um, and I think it's they do both the Grudge and the Ring because
Makes sense. Yeah.
I think they is it Cindy punches the girl look when she comes out the TV.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and there's like the iconic scene of the staircase and the little boy.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh. Watching
yeah,
from the top of the staircase. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I
Okay, so
mean,
you're sitting down, you're getting into it.
yep.
This, this is starting. How are you feeling about it? Do you feel like you're going in already prepared to be scared? Or did you feel like it wasn't something that would necessarily scare you first
Oh,
impressions?
I was 100% ready to have my pants shit.
Okay.
Like
Mm-hmm.
I was really expecting more. And
Yeah.
but I think what amped it up as well is like the little lore dump at the beginning of
Mm-hmm.
like and when it turns one word red, death, curse, fury, and Alex and I were purposely keeping it light together
Mm-hmm.
to sort of quell that fear. But then I
Mm-hmm.
think it got to the point as we got further into the film, it just wasn't necessary. Um,
To keep it light.
no, no,
No.
I don't know about you, but I didn't jump once.
I didn't find it at all scary. And to be fair, this was probably my second time watching it. So I haven't seen it all that many times, but I do
Mm.
remember finding it a lot more frightening the first time I ever saw it. Whereas this time it's not as if I've become desensitized to it because I know exactly what was going to happen. A lot of it was
Mhm.
still, oh, I forgot about that scene. But none of it really made me jump or made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think I braced for a jump
Hmm.
that never came. Um, but I was reading into it like we do because we need to for the podcast.
Hmm.
I was reading into it and reading into what Takashi was trying to do, which was he doesn't like to show a lot of violence. He finds it quite gratuitous. He
Hmm.
likes perhaps the menace of it more, which I know you can definitely see through The Grudge for sure throughout. Like, but I
Hmm.
do feel that the entities, let's call them, um, are creepy. They are,
Yeah, and there's a lot of that in, and I actually think that is because that is how certain spirits are depicted in Japanese folklore.
mm,
Um, there's the symbology around hair, so the dark
yes,
hair, the pale faces, hair in front of the face, and that came up repeatedly in this. Even the part in the is it when they go into the house and the bath is like blocked, and then there's
yes, and
hair in the bath.
mhm.
Yeah, so I can see what he was trying to do there.
Yeah, it is. I would say it's an unsettling film. I wouldn't say it's a
Fair.
scary film. Um, but definitely, I think so. I just think there were a few bits, like the bits in the wardrobe, because it sent us quite a lot around this wardrobe with the attic above, which for me, I mean, people are just asking to be murdered. Like,
I wouldn't even have an attic above a wardrobe. That's just horrendous. I would have to, like, I don't know, board that up or something.
I don't know whether it's maybe just the architecture of the house, but either way, it's like the peeling back of the door, the looking in and the looking up. Just like, just no, just get out of there. It's fine. It's,
Mhm.
oh, I can hear a cat crying. Let the cat cry. One of them, at first I thought it was like a baby crying, and I was like, I'd let the baby cry. No, please, no offense, guys, but like,
No offense.
I'll sit.
No offense to all the babies listening. Um, yeah, no. Yeah. There's a lot of slowly looking up as well, isn't there? Like putting yourself in a very vulnerable position where your head is going into the attic space, but you don't know what's behind you. You don't know what's going to be
Yeah,
in front of your face.
yeah.
Um, just got a torch first. Put the torch up first, give it a shine around, make a bit of
Or,
noise. Don't just creep into the attic. That's
or just don't go up there.
what if the people do care about a baby? What if they
Then
feel differently?
then it's probably their own fault. Bit of victim blaming there for a Tuesday afternoon.
There you go.
But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I just the bits with the when you first see the boy and he like not as the human but as the ghost, and he
Mhm.
goes bah, and like opens his
Yeah.
mouth and it's like ah, it just, I don't think the sound backed it up in a way. Like, don't get me wrong, the sound played a really interesting sort of a really interesting part throughout the whole film. But I was expecting like when he went bah for it to go like bah, something.
Hmm.
It was quite light, so I don't think it had that element of like scare in that way. But do I think that's probably quite overdone? Probably was quite overdone by the time 2004 came around. So maybe doing something different was the aim of the game. What did you? I have a question for you. You obviously said when you were younger you found it scarier. Do you think that's because it was scary at the time, or do you think it was scary because you were younger?
It's a good
Both can also be
question.
true.
I think it probably was a mixture of both, but to be honest, I think that the kind of, as I was saying before, that stereotypical Japanese entity, as you had said, we've seen it a lot now. It's
Mm,
been done quite a lot. Maybe we're almost sort of, yeah, there is an element of you're desensitized to that now, that if you saw a picture of that, you wouldn't be scared of it. Whereas back in the day, apart from The Ring, this was the only sort of film that was doing that. So
yeah.
it was still quite fresh and quite new and quite creepy. So you were instantly thinking, oh, this imagery is really um this imagery is really quite unsettling. And I think that it did do well to feel unsettling. There's a few scenes in it that, even although it didn't necessarily scare me this time, I still remember how I felt watching it. And I still thought, "Do you know what? It's a well put together horror scene.
Mm.
The part in the office block, and then the entity follows the character home and things. There were still
Yeah, I
parts
mean,
of it that I can remember being scared of.
yeah, those were the parts that we braced for,
Hmm.
because we had that moment of the when she's watching it on the monitors and you're watching the guard go in and you're bracing for it and you're like, and then it almost just fizzles up
Yeah.
from the
Hmm.
middle of the corridor, and I feel like they did it better later on when the cops watching it and
Hmm.
the face comes. onto the camera. You know, that's that. But it it seemed as if every almost um jump or was quite slow, and maybe and I'm sure it's done on purpose, but
Mhm.
rather than the idea of it being like this, oh, it was
Yeah.
like it was more creepy than it was scary, I think.
That's interesting though, because I think for me that is more effective than a loud jump scare. I think if I
Mm,
see something fully on the camera, I can be a bit like, okay, I've seen it now. There's nothing left. There's nothing left for my imagination to have to piece together. Like there's no gaps that I need to fill in. Whereas in those more kind of slow creeping scenes,
mm,
you almost imagine what's going to happen worse than what actually happens. So you are just
yeah.
filled with dread. And I think that dreadful feeling is done really well.
Oh, for sure. I think definitely the best bit for that dread is the sister, the office block. It follows her from the
Yeah.
office into her house. Um, she answers the door. She gets into bed. It's in bed with her. That's that is almost that's almost something that I don't think can be forgiven, because bed is always a safe space for monsters. So to make that
Yes.
space no longer safe and have it crawl up under her and then pull her down, be over her, and then have her disappear. Yeah,
Hmm.
terrifying.
I think as well it's that the office block scene, the fact it starts in one location and then travels to another location is
Hmm.
very unsettling because I think we're used to in horror something unsettling or dangerous or scary happening in one area and then the character fails to get away. So, in this particular scene, the character is safe. We think, oh, that's okay. She's escaped the office block. We know that the entity is in there. We know the creature's hanging around,
Mm.
but she's escaped it and she's in her car and she's going to go home and she's going to be okay. And then she gets home and we see it when she's in the lift, that scene where she's in the
Yes.
elevator and we see it in the window and you think, oh, okay, no, she's not okay.
Yeah. Alex noticed it the first window and he was like, the boy, the boy. Um, so yeah. It was definitely a really fun one for like watching everything else behind and waiting for
Hmm.
them to appear. I thought that was really good in term and very unsettling, that idea of it could be anywhere on the screen at any time. So I think it made me very aware and made me watch,
Hmm.
which I think is obviously the purpose. And then those jump scares don't have to be as a perhaps loud or as in because
Hmm.
you're concentrating so hard. It's that video. Do you remember that was on everyone's phones? That was like a car driving through a country road,
Yes, I
and
do remember it.
it goes behind a bush. It's this old video that everybody had on their phones, and it's literally just a panoramic view of the countryside, and you see this car driving through the roads, and then it goes behind a bush, and then you expect it to come out, and then instead some weird zombie thing pops its head up and goes
Yeah.
at you. And I think I mean, obviously not to downplay the filmmakers' art to this, but it's that thing of I'm looking very, very closely and I should be scared easier. I
Yeah.
think
I understand what you mean.
if I wasn't taking notes, maybe I would have been more scared.
Hmm. Hmm.
But gotta take notes, man, or else I'm not gonna remember anything.
Fair enough. I think it's
Um,
interesting though this one and is that you've already mentioned it, but I was going to mention that as well, is that it's not violent. Not
no.
really. There's no gratuitous violence used. Very different from The Grudge. Not The Grudge, sorry. The very different from Descent,
Mm,
in that way, where you are literally in pools of blood. So that's interesting because I think you thought last time that kind of violence didn't really do it for you because it wasn't that you didn't find that kind of thing scary because violence
mm,
doesn't bother you, gore doesn't bother you. Um,
yeah.
so did you feel that this was more scary because there wasn't that kind of element of what you're used to in it?
Yeah, and I think the main thing that really let that down was the plot and the lack of exposition. There was so much exposition from certain people and lore about is it Onryos? I'm not
Mm,
pronouncing that correct.
no.
The entities.
Mhm.
Um but there was nothing else about, and the fact that I've had to read it and realize that they're the people who are prone lying that we see throughout the film and are like they're dying from shock.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's terrifying. The fact that they can't move, that is a terrifying thing for me. Sleep paralysis, that sort of adjacent thing, terrifying. Yeah, no, that
Mm-hmm.
that would, but I just don't think it's as shown as well. But I do think it was scarier in The Descent in terms of the deaths
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that they just disappeared, and then you would see them. Well, when you see the couple in the attic and they're like, well, not rotting, but in the first stages of decomposition. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so yeah, compared to The Descent, which I think borders on perhaps more action horror of
Mm-hmm.
blood, sort of very like, oh, it's all blood and there's everything. Yeah, but I think no, I think The Grudge was better in terms of showing its death for scarier purposes.
Mm-hmm. Fair. Fair. It was very short. Because I knew there was an iconic scene coming up, the scene where the um the, the creature comes downstairs,
Oh, that was at the
crawls
end.
downstairs, and I was like, oh, this scene's coming up. This scene's coming up in a minute. In a while, this is at the end of the film, and then it was that scene. So I didn't feel like there was that much going on. Um,
Yeah,
it went so quickly for me.
yeah, that's the climax, and that was one of the bits that I even know is iconic because
Yeah.
I've seen ghosts and entities, specters, whatever, move like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, I don't know whether that's the first, but I know that maybe it's the first in Western film to do
I
that,
think
maybe
it's
because of
I
that
think
Japanese
it's
influence.
I think it's also heavily influenced by The Exorcist. That kind of crab walk
Interesting. Yeah,
downstairs
like
thing. Yeah.
the juddering, like the body is almost not your
Yeah.
own. Yeah, so that those jittery movements was probably the creepiest bit of the film for me. I think like, and her coming out of the bag as well, all like bloodied, and that's sort of the first real bit that you see all along with that flashback of the husband going mad because he's found her diary about sexy Peter Professor. Um
hmm
and
Yeah.
he I mean so quite violent, just snapping her neck. And
hmm
there was a part of me that was thinking to myself, like, where's the blood from? And then you see it coming from her mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like that
pretty,
bit.
yeah. Well,
hmm
I didn't like that bit. The
hmm
domestic violence I could probably have done without,
It
but
was
um,
effective.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Good.
There were
Okay.
bits of the plot I didn't understand.
Let's run through the plot because the plot is a little bit of an interesting one for sure. And I think that, as we mentioned before, this is a very tight film. I mean, it's got a very quick runtime of about an hour and a half, I think, is it?
Yeah,
Um, and it tries to do quite a lot within that hour and a half. And I think it does struggle slightly. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
I do think, like I was saying before, there's a lot of exposition about the monster
Mm-hmm.
element of it,
Mm-hmm.
the law setting of this is what happens, and there's that scene on the roof where the detective goes, oh yeah, it's just a murder of rage, such rage and an intent of, creates a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, all right, cool, yeah. Any of the law though, like, anything else? No, no,
No.
nothing, nothing other than the fact that everyone that comes from that house apparently is then, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't fully make sense to me on how the victims were chosen and how the curse worked.
Well,
So was it house specific? And once you were in the house, you were then a
but
target?
yes, apparently that is it. And I've read up and I've read on the plots and things, and that stays quite coherent of yes, it is if you go into the house. But here's the thing: what about all the texts that were there in the, like when they did the crime scene? All the texts. The estate
Right.
agent, we never see him die.
No, true.
So
Yeah, yeah.
for for me, the only linear link that we have for someone that didn't have a vested interest in that house really is the sister.
hmm
And I suppose Max from Roswell, which I think is Justin Bear, Sarah Michelle Gellar's boyfriend or partner
Okay,
or husband, or those
whatever.
two are
Yeah.
the only ones that don't really have the real strong connection to that
Mm.
house. Um, but yeah, that everything else seemed a bit like, oh yeah, but the maybe the ghost just goes, oh yeah, but those are just science techs. They're just forensic techs. They're just doing their job. I'm not going to attack
Yeah.
them.
I'm not going to ruin their day. They don't have anything to do with this. They're just trying to get on with their life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with the estate agent. He's just making a living. He's got to sell this house.
Exactly. He's got a family, he's got mouths to feed. He doesn't need me messing everything
Yeah.
up for him. Yeah, okay. So the ghost had a little bit of compassion, which would make sense because the ghost is the wife, isn't it? It's the wife of the husband, the jealous husband, and she's obviously got feelings, an obsession perhaps for this professor.
Mm.
Um, and then both her and her son are killed in a fit of rage. And when someone dies in a venge through rage, it creates a grudge,
Yeah.
this particular
Um,
kind of ghost.
and I
Yeah.
also didn't get, because they're very clear that it's a murder suicide at the beginning when you see it through the
Hmm.
newspaper and everything like that, what Sarah Michelle Gellar's looking for. I also really loved the convenient newspaper article where it was like family of three killed, and then just on the same front page, professor throws himself off balcony. Like, the timeline, despite being a non-linear narrative, which I enjoyed because I like that it all came together bit by bit, but it wasn't even spoon feeding. It wasn't like 6 months earlier or
No,
whatever.
no, you were just expected to use a little bit of inference skill there, which was nice actually. It was.
Yeah. So, but
Um,
then you get that thing of the professor, but are we to assume then that as we see him leave the house when he finds out, he just is, but that they would, is that the same day? Like,
well, I'd
you,
assume so because it's in the paper at the same time. But
but
then,
what I would
yeah.
say is that boy, the little boy, goes between Ghost Boy
Hmm.
and sort of apparition in the flesh quite a lot throughout the film,
He does.
which really messes with the narrative because
Hmm.
we know that the big bad husband man kills his wife
Hmm.
and then he drowns the boy in the bathtub,
Yes.
but then it says that he kills himself.
Hmm.
But I read that she kills him by hanging him with her hair, which is what you see when he's being pushed against the thing.
Yes.
He's
I was
hung
going
with
to
her. So,
say that's it. So when she is a vengeful spirit,
which apparently
he's
happens like that.
instantly, you just go from dead to full on vengeful, which is fine, fair enough. Um, but yes, he's her first kill, and she kills him by hanging him with her hair. Hence the hair symbology going through all the way through the film.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think
fine.
that was done very cleverly with, because at first I thought it was like it's almost smoke like,
Hmm.
and then that
Yeah.
smoke becomes hair, and it's very good at being like getting you to be like, what is in my mouth? Like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's quite yeah, there's something very sinister and unsettling about hair. And there's hair in the titles as well, isn't it? The opening titles where it's like
yeah.
black mist smoke.
I did write
Um,
down,
yeah.
thank God for opening credits in the thousands. Like such an iconic
Yeah.
way. Even in the Descent, they all have similar titles. It doesn't matter what kind of film it is. It's all done and shot like it's an action film. Like the
Hmm.
swoop ins, the PowerPoint, like
Yeah. Star
changes,
Wipe.
the
Yeah.
checkerboard patterns. Like it's all, oh, it's so early thousands, but I love it.
Hmm. So he is her first kill. And
Yes, he
then
is.
she decides then she haunts the house. So then I assume her spirit, her vengeful spirit, is attached to the house.
Yes, I assume
Yeah,
so. And
right.
are we're talking about the events chronologically. The film obviously doesn't happen this way.
Mm.
You almost get it you don't really get it top to bottom, do you? You get because but it
Kind
doesn't
of
matter.
jumps around, doesn't it?
So then this American family moves in. The head of the family is he's brought his wife
Hmm.
and his mum, and I think his sister already works there as well.
Hmm.
So his company's brought him out to Japan, and his wife and his sort of beginning to ail mother, because
Hmm.
when we first meet her, she's quite different looking and is very much in the throes of a dementia type state.
Hmm.
Um, but they do it again. They do it again, Amy, all the way through this film of like, you can't have seen something. She's just crazy.
Oh,
She's
I
just
know.
dementia-ridden. It's like, oh God, I know why you've done it. I know why you've given her dementia to make her an unreliable narrator, but we
Exactly.
don't need her to be an unreliable narrator. We need her to be reliable so people can pay attention and not
Yeah.
into this house.
Yeah, a little bit cheap, but different, slightly a different way of doing it, which I actually did appreciate. I liked the fact that her character was almost like locked in and had that horrendous experience of seeing all these horrific things and nobody believing her.
Yeah.
Um, that was a kind of horror of itself. And then the carer element was also quite effective because then we got this steady stream of people that were coming into this house to look after the mum and then being affected by the curse. So it was an effective way for the curse to spread outside of the home as well.
Yeah, and I would say the most heinous thing that ghost does, despite all the killings,
Mm.
is make that house a tip for that poor old woman to have to be blamed for
And
every
also,
time.
yeah, I know every time. Why is the house always an absolute disaster area? All the sinks, all not the sinks, the bathtub all
Full
blocked up and full, and it's very dark and dismal, and yeah.
crisps everywhere, the ramen goes everywhere, and the wife says to the older lady, like, if you wanted some food, you could have just asked. It's like, all right, so the ghost's just gonna let her take the rap for that, are they?
And we thought the
Um,
ghosts were nice as well. We thought they were understanding of the police. The police officers are doing their job. The estate agents just trying to get on with things,
oh, I
and then they
mean,
just
no,
fuck
they
over the old lady.
absolutely, and they do absolutely kill the three detectives that were on the original case. That and the Ara Nakagawa, I think, is the detective, and he very much is like my three friends.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. Hmm.
so this family moves in, and
Hmm.
then it doesn't take long for them to be taken by the curse. Um, the husband comes home, finds his wife in bed, like she
Hmm.
is beyond terrified, and then she eventually dies, I suspect, from shock.
From
And
shock,
then
yeah.
he then sees the little boy, and that's where I thought it was going to get really fucking creepy because the little boy is there in his little ghost form going ah,
Hmm.
and it doesn't. And there's that bit where he's in front of the wardrobe. The wardrobe is open, and I was expecting him to be like, was he dragged into it? Was that a thing that happened or not? Or he looks up,
He
and
looks
the
up,
face is there with the hair, like blah, blah,
yeah,
blah.
and he's like pulled up
Yes,
into
and
it,
then
yeah.
and then their bodies are found, and yeah,
Hmm.
I wonder why it leaves the old woman alone.
I don't know. I
It
found
does
it.
eventually It does eventually kill her. But yeah, sorry, you were saying.
No, it does. It does eventually kill her. I don't know. The motive of the killings is hard to really understand. I think if it was
Mm.
like it killed happy couples, happily married couples through jealousy because of
Yeah.
that would make sense. Um, yeah, and if it was just a case of it just kills everybody, then also that's fine. But then it wasn't. It didn't just kill everybody because some people were spared, which we didn't really understand what made those people different from others.
Yeah.
So the
I
lore was a
think,
little bit confusing to understand sometimes.
yeah, for something that has such a strong lore background of
Mm,
folklore, specifically a Japanese culture, it I wonder whether the Western element or having to make it for a Western audience
maybe.
maybe it needed to there was an element of something that we in the West needed that took away from that, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, maybe. Yeah, like a
Um,
cultural thing as well. So much of Japanese culture is about sort of keeping up appearances and being polite and not being shamed and all these sorts of things. So maybe that just wouldn't translate well to a Western audience. I don't know.
it's an interesting one. So I'm looking at the Onryo. Apologies again for all our Japanese listeners. Um, Believed to be capable of causing harm in the world of the living, injuring or killing enemies, or even causing natural disasters to exact vengeance,
Oh.
to redress the wrongs it received while alive. As
Mm.
often depicted as wronged women, traumatized, envied, disappointed, bitter, or just furious by what happened during life and exact revenge in death. So to me, that gives it almost a senseless type, like almost a maddening and lost to their rage, lost to their, But if we consider the rage element, maybe that would be a good way to sort of excuse the, not plot holes, but excuse the not everyone dying because you're in a fit of rage, you don't think straight. So maybe that's just the element of the ghost kills who the fuck it wants because it fucking
Mhm.
does.
Yeah.
Basically, this is my house and I will kill whoever I want to.
I had a little look into I was just getting the notes up there about why was there a period where Japanese films were redone for a Western audience? What was because there did seem to be a spate of them. The Ring, The Grudge, The Eye. I don't know if Mirror. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these films before, but they're all originally Japanese.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, it just happened to be something that wasn't really a reason for it. But I think that what this article I was reading was saying is that a lot of it got lost in translation, and that's why they were never as scary. So when you
Mm.
watch both of them, maybe one after the other, the Japanese version is notably more frightening than the
Hmm.
Western version. So they tamed the Western version down a little bit. They diluted it by making it a little bit more, I guess, tell not show. There was
Right.
too much exposition there because Japanese, a lot of it came from Shinto or Buddhist folklore and understanding of those religions. And
Hmm.
without that understanding, there was a lot more that had to, well, a lot more gaps that had to be filled for a Western
Yeah.
audience. And that's why it took away from, you know, making it a little bit more creepy
Yeah.
and had to spend so much time just, as we've seen in this film, just giving us so much info dump about the lore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
I,
yeah.
which we're ruining it for ourselves.
We always do, Liv. We always do. Oh dear. Yeah.
But yeah, so other than that, I just think so. I can't blame the non-linear narrative because I really enjoyed that. And we talked how not being spoon-fed's quite gratifying because we actually feel like we're allowed to be clever in films and allowed to have this sort of insight. Um, but I think perhaps there's something maybe lost.
And
Not.
actually, the bones of it were there. Some of the
Mm,
scenes were really well done. I know we've mentioned it already. The office block to the home to the apartment scene was a really effective, I think, couple of scenes.
yeah,
Um, just in, as we were saying before, just in that way of kind of putting it on its head and that you're not safe anywhere, that this is going to follow you. Very effective. I think if more time was spent on similar scenes, adding that little bit more creeping dread rather than just getting a couple of those, a handful of those here and there. And there was also a few kind of more cheap scenes, perhaps. We've talked about a very iconic scene with the in the shower with the
yeah.
hands. I'd be interested to know if that's in the Japanese original version of the film. I would imagine not.
Oh, I'm not sure. Anything in unfortunately anything in a shower in a creepy sense is always gonna seem like an homage to Psycho.
Hmm. Hmm.
Not wholly because obviously they're different films and different things happen in the showers, but it's back to that bed thing as well. You feel safer in a shower almost because it's warm and it's comforting and it's safe like a bed.
Yeah, but then I
And
guess there's also that sense of vulnerability in a shower. You're naked. You
exactly,
have to close your eyes a lot. So,
yeah,
it's it can be very unsettling. I mean, I know myself when you probably have had similar when you're maybe thinking you're in the shower and you hear a sound and you're like, what's that? What do I, and I'm in this room now, this tiny room, and I'm
Yeah.
vulnerable. So yeah, I can see why they played on it, but I just would be interested to know if that gratuitous kind of comedic almost horror element of the hand coming out of the head, if that would be in the
Mm,
Japanese version, or is that maybe more for Western audiences? Did something have to be a bit more
mm,
obviously creepy there
yeah.
for it to work? I don't know.
Yeah, the hand with with coming out of the head was really interesting. It gave me like almost like the ghost was playing with her, like this sense of
Mm,
I have the sense of control. I have followed you.
hmm
Here, let me help you with your suds. You know, like
hmm Yeah.
you've
Yes.
missed a bit at the back here, like you know, but
I could
also
kill
I'm
you, but I just want to mess with you, basically. I just want to make you scared.
yeah yeah, which gave it very much a less of a less of that rageful, unable to think, more
Mm,
premeditated, more, you know, being is it on the bus in the reflection of the window? Like that she sees it there, more like, ah, I'm here, you know. So it
mm.
gives that more of a there's sometimes where it was this mindless sort of violence of whoever comes into this house, I'm gonna fucking kill because I'm rageful, versus I'm also gonna play with my food before I eat it. There were some bits where I thought to myself, this is this a horror comedy? Like, you know. Well, so the bits where she goes to see the professor, sorry, she goes to see the professor's wife, and she's like, "Come on, I need you to help me." It's like, no, you don't. Like, what's this woman gonna do? Like, what? And she just it gives her also the smallest box of his things for some.
Yeah, I know. Just yeah, just so that one thing's I know, but do you not think that is a trope of horror? And I know you haven't watched much of it in your own, you admit that, but there is that sense of this is the finding out part of it now.
Mm,
We have to have the scene of someone sitting at a computer and Googling key phrases or going to the library and doing some research. There's that part. And then there has to be the person that helps them. So they go and
yeah,
speak to an expert, or they go and speak to a family member, or they speak to someone that's been in an asylum or something. You know, all these kind of tropey
yeah.
things where it's like it follows a very much a formula. So again, I don't know if they were just trying to shoehorn that formula in there, and that's why she goes and speaks to his wife. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. And for me, it's sort of, Sarah Michelle Gellar. How, I mean, first off, props to her. I don't know how well she does it, but she speaks some Japanese in it.
She does.
Yeah.
She does.
It's
Yep.
it sounds fairly. It doesn't sound very American. She's not going konnichiwa, like
Mm-hmm.
a fucking southern person from America would do. And shouting it at people. She seems quite soft spoken. She seems
Yeah.
pretty good. They don't try to make her fluent, which I
No, no.
appreciate.
No,
But
she's I think her character was good. Like I actually enjoyed her character. I thought she was likable. I thought I felt sort of empathy for her throughout the film. I think
mm,
she, for the most part, reacted how you would react, you know. But yeah, I just another thing we were saying before, just in terms of that East v West thing. Um, again, you were talking about the scene with the hand coming out of her hair. And
mm,
it's almost we're always trying to humanize the ghosts. What's their reason?
yeah,
What's their rationale? Or they're trying to frighten you, or they're trying to trick you, or they're actually in the folklore where this all stems from, the idea is that they don't have human characteristics anymore. They're
mm,
out with the realms of human understanding, is what the article
yeah.
said. So
Ooh,
we don't need to humanize these spirits because they are no longer human. They're just
mm,
rage.
yeah, yeah.
So is that maybe also not particularly well done? I don't know.
Absolutely, especially when it's not something we have in, we don't know about the Onryos or anything in our culture, and it's not, and that's our fault, obviously, because we should know more about other people's cultures, but we haven't grown up on those sorts of scary tales of
I
of,
think it's
of
important
creatures of
to
nature.
also appreciate, I suppose, as well, that I don't suppose everybody in Japan is sitting around thinking this is real. I think that
Mm.
would be unfair to say that, they see it as it's folklore at the end of the day. It's like coming
Yeah.
here and saying, "Oh, you must believe in the Kelpies." Well, no, that would be quite offensive to think that I have rational thinking skills, and critical thinking skills. I don't think we're sitting thinking this is something that everybody in Japan believes, that when someone dies in a rage filled murder, for example, that all these
Yeah.
unreals are floating around. Not saying that,
No,
but
absolutely not. More that they would be aware of that because it's folklore that
yes,
they, or, you have those tales that you're told as children and things that are woven
yes.
into Western films, Western culture, like our Westernized, our European fairy tales, those sorts of
Mhm,
things. It's a
mhm.
similar element. Yeah, no, of course. I'm not sitting here being like, God, well, the Japanese people must have a better shit pants time because they must be terrified this is going to
Must
happen
be
to them.
horrified. Also, yeah, is it a kind of cautionary tale thing? That'd be interesting to know. Is it something that Japanese children are taught from a young age, that, rage and anger can
Mm,
manifest these creatures, a bit like
yeah.
what we are told about certain things, about you act a certain way, don't do this, don't do that, or else something frightening is going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So that would be really interesting. If anyone is listening and they are from Japan, first of all, really sorry. Secondly, just for all of it, really, you
Mm.
secondly, let us know because I would be fascinated to know.
I want to know.
Sure
Oh,
anyone would as
yeah,
well, yeah. Um,
absolutely. Love Japan.
but yeah, how did you feel about the bit where the plot to get everybody back to the house at the end was a little sticky for me. Like, so as far as I'm aware, Sarah Michelle Gellar, her boyfriend Jason Bear, whatever he's called, doesn't believe her. They're both here studying. She's followed him out. They're both studying together, and they're both living together, and it's really sweet and cute. I mean that you don't get a lot of their relationship, so
No.
I'm not as invested in them as I should be. Um, and essentially, yeah, they go back to their house, and she just can't be there. She has to go for a walk, and that cues her doing her research montage. But then she comes home, he's not in, and he's left a message on the answering machine telling her that essentially he doesn't think she's going crazy, but it's just like, everything's fine, don't worry about it. Like, I'm worried about you. Where are you? Why haven't you come home? And he then says, it's that house, isn't it? I'm going there. This is where you'll be. So he makes an assumption that that's where she's going to be. Um, and I
Yeah.
mean,
Why?
we, we assume that if films were normally done the year or 2 years before. So let's assume this is done in 2002 and is pretty true to modern time in terms of when it's set. No one's got mobile phones.
No.
So I
Yeah.
suppose I understand
Yes, you're totally
that
right.
thing of like, hey, where are you? What's going on? But also to just make an assumption that you're just going to go up to this house that's an active crime scene or is supposed to be an active crime scene because you think your
Yeah.
girlfriend's there. Um, but yeah, it's that thing of just believe the people that you love. Like, just
Yeah.
give them the benefit of the doubt. Yes, they've gone through a scary time. Yes, they've gone through something very traumatic. But maybe if they're so adamant, go along with it just for a little while. This is our advice for you guys, for all of you listening. If anything
Yes.
creepy ever happens, and you know someone you love and trust is telling you that they've seen a creepy ghost or they've seen something, you don't necessarily have to believe it, but just indulge them because you never know
Indulge
what's
them
going to
just in
happen.
case. It's always better to be safe than sorry. And we found in most of these films, if not all of these films that we've watched so far, by not believing them, it makes things 10 times worse.
Absolutely. If you don't believe the loved one, you're probably going to be the first to die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, cautionary
Whew,
tale from
yeah.
us.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, how did you find that
Ah,
finale and climax? Because
it
you
was a
she
little
goes
bit.
in, yeah, everybody's going into the house at different points. Detective goes in, he then gets drowned by the husband, which is a ghost
Hmm.
we've never seen
Never seen the
this
ghost
whole
before.
time,
This is a new ghost.
and is technically the last time we see him because all you see is the flannel and the plaid that he's wearing. So much so that Alex thought that Sarah Michelle Gellar's boyfriend was the one drowning the detective in the bath because he also is wearing a dark plaid jacket.
Fair enough. But the thing is, right, there should, if that's the case, and that he is now a ghost,
Mm,
everyone should be a ghost that was killed by the vengeful spirits. So where are all the other
yes.
ghosts?
So I looked this up because I
Great.
asked the exact same question.
Mm.
And I think the general consensus is that they just didn't want to put that many ghosts into the house. Like they didn't want to make it even more confusing.
Okay, that's fair, but why bring the husband ghost back? Just don't bring any ghosts back. Do you know what I mean? Like just either do one or the other, because then that way you're it's more credible and the story is easier to follow and that we know the rules a little bit more. The rules felt like they
Yeah,
changed quite a lot at the end of the film.
yeah,
You kind of knew what was going on and then you didn't.
yeah. And for the sake of exposition, we have this moment where the ghost clearly decides that they're not going to kill Sarah Michelle Gellar straight away. They're going to show her through a flashback what
Hmm.
happened back then, back then, back
But
then.
again, why just her? And then
Exactly.
we've just, as I was saying before that article, then the ghost wouldn't react that way because the belief is that that ghost no longer is human or capable of having human emotions other than just blind rage. But even if we want to try and think, okay, this is a slightly different interpretation of that spirit, why only show it to Sarah Michelle Gellar? Well, we know why, because she's our final girl, but it doesn't make sense
Yeah,
in the grand
yeah.
scheme of things.
Unless we assume that it's shown to everyone,
Maybe, and
but
this is
we
just her
just
chance to see it. Could be.
maybe. But yeah, we basically the end scene. You very much get a flashback of the beginning events, right? You see
Mhm.
the wife writing in her diary about sexy, handsome Peter Professor, who
Hmm.
Bill Pullman is not the sexiest guy.
Not to
Um,
throw your whole life away and then die in a murderous rage. No.
I mean, I don't think she does it on purpose for Bill, but no, I mean that diary doesn't even have a lock on it.
She's taking risks.
And I'm not saying again, we're not victim blaming. This isn't her fault. This is all solely on the husband here. Um, but yeah, what's also with cutting out your own face and sticking them on the wardrobe?
I don't really understand. I think the face cutting thing was again just more creepy imagery, but it didn't really
Mm.
stand up to any kind of scrutiny, to be honest.
I'm I'm
Um,
I'm reaching for
yeah,
a symbolic thing, and all I'm getting is maybe she's taking her own face away from the family photos because that's not the family she wants. She wants a family with the professor or
maybe.
whatever. Which,
But even if
you
we'd
know,
found pictures of her where she had stuck her face next to the professor photograph, it
yep,
would translate better. Maybe wouldn't
yeah.
be quite as nuanced, be quite obvious what's going on.
Mm.
But sometimes you need things to be a little bit more in your face when you only have a very short clip to try and piece together what's been going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been done to be creepy, and you look, it worked. It was creepy, but you and I have to go a little deeper than creepy. We have to figure
But
out
then I
why.
didn't I didn't really like the insinuation or the kind of illusion that she was creepy before she was the ghost. I felt like there was sometimes kind of it was trying to almost make it seem as if when she was in that relationship where she was, she didn't want to be in it, she very much was um attracted to the professor. Why were we trying to make her creepy then?
Yeah, in those
Uh,
section of photos that Sarah Michelle
yeah,
Gellar sees in the apartment, she's in a lot of the photos. Also, there all those photos were taken on the same day. I'm saying that like they clearly at a zoo or something like that because all of them are all in the same clothes. Like, did someone fill up a disposable 32 pictures camera on one day?
you think you would just take a couple of hats, like a few props, a pair of sunglasses, a hat,
Yeah, yeah. God.
something. Just yeah, yeah. Yeah, I didn't like that so much. Because it was difficult then. It was that so we didn't feel sorry for her, but then why show us the flashback to give us the understanding about the ghost? But then it was almost as if, but don't feel too sorry for her because look at her, how creepy she is in the background of all these photographs. It's like, okay, yeah,
Yeah, it definitely it almost as if it needed to fabricate a reason for why the husband would kill her.
exactly. And is that, do we need that? I don't think we need that.
Exactly. Looking at that on a deeper level. and the whole idea that men need a reason to kill their wives or to
Mm-hmm.
kill women in general. They don't. It's very much been proven that men do not need a reason to kill women.
No,
And not a
absolutely
lot
not.
stops them either.
But in 2004, for a Western audience, did they?
Maybe.
Did they need to give us something so that we couldn't just see the husband as the villain? Because the villain was not the husband. The villain was the wife, whether she was alive or whether she was dead.
And maybe that's the reason that we try and humanize, or specifically you and I in this moment try and humanize her, because we understand that she is not the villain. She is a monster of his making.
And you would like to think that's what the filmmakers were trying to do, but a lot of and in some ways it very much came across like they were trying to do that, you know,
Mm.
but then in other ways it felt like sometimes they were trying to make her the villain, which yeah, it was a little bit muddied and a bit confusing, but was that just to make it more, I don't know, easier to swallow for the Western audience of the time? Perhaps.
Yeah, look, and I'm not Russian to go and watch the Japanese one. Not necessarily because I think it'll be rubbish, but if there was a part of me that was very relieved to have not found that scary. So I don't think I want to take the chance. That's all
No,
I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
you got out of it pretty lightly.
Yes, I did.